Okay, so as I have segregated and divided the portion, I hope many of you might have seen it on Facebook. I have posted that. So, for the time being, problem solving, search and control has been dealt by both me and Rathi sir. Rathi sir may have started certain portion of KRS, that means knowledge representation systems. Presently, he's running up with the reasoning systems, right? Many of you, those who are listening this part for the first time, I'd just like to draw your attention and give you a certain amount of flavor of about what is in store for us, right? So I have jotted down a few things. Like if I sum it up as KRS, this chapter, let me tell you that I have posted almost 16 to 17 lecture videos already there in the YouTube. The BY guys have already seen it. The BX people can see it at any point of time. I'll be sharing all the links with you at the end of this lecture, or in my WhatsApp group. You can get it from the from the BY guys also, right? So uh, just keep on listening and interrupt me at any point of time if you feel like. You can ask me some questions also, right? Just help me out in doing only one thing, that keep your mics mute, huh? Because that thing will be creating a lot of noise for me out here at this end. I'm not using a headphone device. I'm using the mic of my laptop itself. So please cooperate, right? So KRS, knowledge representation system, in a very, very lucid form, how and that, right? That means the procedural part and the declarative part. Under how section, we know how to do something, right? Knowledge representation, under this head, we know how to do something. Under another head, I'm just giving you the flavor. I'm not just going through like what is that, define this, just a simple chart of it. You'll be getting all these things gradually. You'll be getting the whole thing summed up under one folder in in your Facebook, from where you can download all the tutorials, all the materials, all the videos, everything very soon, right? So, and another part is like that of that. That means asserting something, right? Saying out something, that something is true or false, right? So if I talk about KRS, I can simply talk about how to represent a knowledge, and that means asserting something or saying something, or making something happen, right? Or asserting something, saying something true or false, right? Now if I sum up under the second heading, like knowledge plus representation, then there are certain checks to be done, right? Or you can say there are certain there are certain conditions to be fulfilled. What are those conditions for knowledge representation? Why I have jotted down these things by hand, you'll be getting a lot of my handwritten notes, because this is what I had been doing for so many days and months. This thing gives you, I mean, you don't have to run through the whole of the slides before examinations. You might be getting around 15-20 days of time when the college reopens, and you have to run through all these things. Maybe I'll be bring all these things in short in the physical classes, right? So knowledge plus representation, the checks are the system's competence and the system's performance. Whenever I'm representing something, I have to check whether the system is competent enough or the system's performance is good enough, right? Now, coming on to this fourth point out here, the different types of knowledge require different types of representation techniques. You got to remember this thing very precisely. Like, different types of knowledge requires different types of representation techniques. In a nutshell, so that I can remember and I can have something to write down during my examination, I can simply say that KR models or KR mechanisms, that means knowledge representation models or knowledge representation mechanisms, based on, you can simply say knowledge representation model and mechanisms can be listed under these four heads. Or somebody may even ask you that what are the knowledge representation mechanisms, I mean the distinctions that are based on mechanisms or model. So if I'm talking about the distinctions based on mechanisms and model, I can call it purely a logical representation. But if I talk about KR, that means knowledge representation models exclusively, or mechanisms on which this distinction is based on, I can say that I can have logic, rules, frames, and semantic nets. Let me tell you, These all things are from our slides that are already there with you. Right. Now, in all, I do have four things or four models based on which I have made the segregation. That means logic, rules, frames, and semantics. While you are listening with me, you might have seen me in the class. I always carry a piece of paper. I jot down things. You don't have to write it just for your own self. Even if you're having a piece of paper, if you're scribbling it with your pen, that thing will make out an impression on your head. You don't have to go through it the night before exam when you'll be joining the colleges. Right. Now, knowledge representation mechanisms based on logic, rules, frames, and semantic nets. Do I have some more representation techniques? Of course, I do have. I'm not putting up the cursor out there. The last line, that means the relational, the inferential, that means inferring something, etc. Now, you could have asked me another question like, are you segregating these things under these six heads? What are these six heads? Logics, rules, frames, and semantics. Are you talking about only these four and the remaining two six? The remaining two, that means the six. My answer will be no, not exactly so. We are having much more complexities than what you are seeing on your slides or on your frame, right? So let's move out from this and let's start up with something. So if you have gone through like the BX guys, those who have gone through the BY guys, those who have gone through the YouTube videos that I've created and I've posted them on my YouTube channel. This is the slide before which up to which I have covered, right? Don't worry at all. BX people, don't worry at all. Things will be very nice. So, out of the representation techniques, the first technique after I have covered up in the YouTube tutorials is the relational knowledge. So, for the time being, those of you who are picking it up for the first time and is at least interested in listening to me, then let us start up from here. It is the relational knowledge. Many of you have gone through this knowledge. What are these representations? These representations are our basic database representations that we do have. We do have relations that are made up between the objects consisting of attributes and its corresponding values that are listed under those attribute heads, right? Let's say we do have a table out here. This is a simple relational table that is there in front of us. See, gradually we'll be picking up the things, so please pay heed to whatever I'm saying for the present moment. In the table that you do have the player descriptions. Like, let's say we are having four players. The player names are given. Aaron, Mays, Ruth, and Williams are there. And these players do have their height, their weight, and the strategy by which they bat or they throw the ball, right? These are some of the factual information that has been given to you. Hey, just a moment. He's waiting in the lobby. Why this is coming up? Somebody's waiting in the lobby. Why this is so? Can anybody reply me? How come? Oops. Hey Bhagwan, hey Bhagwan. How can I allow her? How can I allow this Vijaya Mishra? How can I do that? How can I do that? How can I do that? Participants. Admit. Yeah. Okay, fine. You're there, right? All of you there? Any one of you? Kindly respond. All of you there? Are you listening? Am I audible? Hey, am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. Sure. So I do have a table, a representation table comprising of a few individuals, their height, their weight, the way they bat, the way they throw. Now, these kind of knowledge representation techniques can answer certain queries like who's the heaviest player, How you're going to do that? You'll be writing down you're going to write down a simple SQL script for this. The SQL script will be who will be the highest player for that, who is the heaviest player. You'll be going on the basis of the weight for that, the max weight that you'll be getting from that particular column, and you'll be extracting that information from there, right? This is one of the ways of representation that we know. You can even ask for things like who bats left or who throws right. These are some of the ways by which you can extract information. So for the time being, what is the representation technique that we know? It is the relational knowledge representation technique that we have gone through. Let's move on to the next slide. The next important thing is knowledge classes. Under knowledge classes, this is the inheritable knowledge. Now, at this point of time, I'd like to take up a few more minutes here. Something that is based on inheritance, right? Something that is based on property inheritance, like how come on the basis of hierarchy of the object, that means the classes of the system, the classes in which we have already segregated the thing, how they inherit the property of its hierarchical previous class, right? So this is how somehow we can inherit the particular kind of knowledge. So rather than going through this whole of the theory part, it is better to come to the actual part of it. This actual inheritable knowledge part is based on semantic network as well as on the basis of frames, slots, and filler structure. Now let me tell you that if you go back to the slides initially, here, that means the stuff that I was talking about, like logic, predicate logic, I have already talked about. The things that you're supposed to know is rules, frames, and semantic nets, right? This is what you're supposed to know. This is what you're supposed to know. Just a moment. So now, when we are back here, I'll just do one thing. I'll take you to another slide for a few moments. Even before I say something about this slide, these are not my slides at all. They are copyrighted materials of NPTEL's lecture series, the recent lecture series of IIT Kharagpur. I have simply taken it from there, so there should not be any kind of copyright infringement or whatsoever. Okay, so if I'm talking about, that means the part where I have left, that means here I am. I'm talking about the semantic net. Even though I do have a dedicated lecture on semantic net, still I'll be giving you a brief hint about that. In my simple relational knowledge, as is given here, if I want to sum it up in the form of a semantic net, then what am I going to do? A semantic net, for the time being, for you, I'd say it is a simple hierarchical structure, right? It is a structure that comprises of the attribute class types of is a and an instance class. Is a and an instance class. Now, where do we put? Yeah, Utsav, put off your mic. So we do have Davis and John out here. This is my object class, right? This is my object class. You could have asked me a question that how come you are picking up in a semantic net this too as an object class? In the whole of the semantic net structure, there is something that you need to know very precisely. I'll be switching over these again and again. If you go through our basic slides that are already there with you, is a notation in a frame structure. I'm not going to the frames first. I'm talking about the semantic net. Now, even before I talk about the semantic net and I'm going through the details of the semantic net, let me tell you something. If I'm talking about the frames, frames are having a very thin line boundary in a orientation structure previously lesser complex than that of the frames, which we call it as the semantic nets, right? So in semantic nets, when the hierarchical division becomes higher, that means we are having multiple class structure to be defined, then we move on from the semantic nets towards frames. So Moving on from semantic nets to frame is a very, very thin line boundary. This is not what I am saying. This is what is there in the NPTEL lecture series, right? So for the time being, wherever you are going to see we are talking about a class inclusion. Whenever I am talking about an instance, I am talking about a class membership. To make it much more lucid and understandable, if I am talking about is then I am talking about what? Now I am talking about making something inclusive within a particular superclass or a more generalized class, right? There are a lot of players, there are a lot of doctors, a lot of engineers all around. They all belong to a higher level class or a more generalized class. We call it as the human beings. This is one of the examples, right? So here, all the human beings are inclusive. All the classes of the people are inclusive under one head. We call it as the human beings, right? Whereas in case of instance, what we do is it talks about the class membership. Now, what is this class membership structure? Now, if I'm talking about, let's say, this is one of the examples, or you can go to this example also. Both are same. So, what is there right now available with you, other than your video tutorials that I've already put up, video lectures that I've already put up, is better to go through this. If I'm picking up something like the three finger brown or the PV Reese, right? If I'm talking about these two, what are they? They are players, right? Three Finger Brown is a player. PV Riss is also a player. He basically belongs from the from the 1890s or 1870s. I'm forgetting, from the 18th century, from the 19th century, and he's from the 20th century, right? So PV Rees is also a player. So I'm talking about the class object. That means Three Finger Brown. He's what? He's an object class. This object class holds an instance, that means a particular instance, as a type of player called as a pitcher in the baseball game series. Likewise, PVVs holds a class of player, that means an instance class as fielder, right? But Three Finger Brown, Brown and Reese, both of them are what? Now, both of them, they hold an instance of a class of player. You can see it here. They both of them belong to, or they have a class inclusion to the baseball player. A much higher order class inclusion is what? Na adult male. Obviously, this is a much higher order inclusive class. And even a higher order class is a person. That means Brown and Reese overall can be included. That means a class inclusion will be under the person heading. Under the person heading. Fine. Sorry, you might be getting the voice of my mom. She's talking with another lady who's beside us. I'm sorry for these kind of things. He's waiting in the lobby again. Participants. Hey, everything is audible and you can see the screen now. Please keep on saying me a yes. Okay, fine. Thank you. Thanks. Okay, fine. Hold on. So now they belong to a more higher order class. They belong to a much higher order class. That means class inclusion in the person's heading, right? Please don't feel panicked, because I'll be using our standard lecture notes, as well as with that I'll be taking care from the NPTEL lecture notes. So coming down here, a similar kind of example is given here. That means Davis and John, they hold an instance of, this is a type of, those of you who know about music, I don't have much of idea about music, they belong to these kind of musicians, right? This specific class of musician, right? And they belong to an inclusive class of musician, and they have a higher order inclusion as an adult male. It is good that you haven't asked about what is this age and what is this. That means when we are going downwards, what is this? I'll be talking about it very soon. So I'll be talking about this whole part. What are these? What are these? What are these? Gradually. Okay, keep on seeing. So right now, for the time being, you have seen from Brown and Rees, we are moving towards the person. This type of climbing architecture series. That means now let me tell you a small story that you've already known. You have already known about generalization and specialization. Many of you, uff, baba re baba, kotokon will be waiting in the lobby रे. कितना देर तक लॉबी में वेट करेगा रे लड़का. Wait participants. अरे तुम लोगों ने सेंचुरी पूरा कर दिया यार, 100 आ गए. गुड. और थोड़े आ जाओ, कुछ और आ जाओ प्लीज, कुछ और आ जाओ. इसको प्लीज 101 कर दो. चंदा जैसा लगेगा, अच्छा लगेगा मुझे. Okay, so we are done with this. These parts, that means talking about the frame structure. I'll again take you back here. So I have already talked about all these things in my video lecture that is there. I'll be playing that also in our next lecture or next to next lecture. I'll be going through those things also. uh, I'll be not talking about this. I'll not be talking about this. I'll just take you. These all things are already dealt. These all things are already dealt. Don't worry. If needed, I'll talk about these again. These again. So from semantic nets, I have taken you back to the frames. So whenever you'll be getting these course materials, what you got to do is, the first thing that you got to do is you just roll down the best and the first definition. रोल नंबर B243. फिर ये बंद कर बाबा अपना माइक. A frame is a collection of attributes or slots and associated values that describe some real world entity, right? I'd ask you कि अगर आप से हो सके तो एक छोटे से piece of paper में लिख लो. A frame is a collection of attributes or slots and associated values that describe some real world entity. जो slides, standard slides जो हमारे पास दिए गए हैं to follow, that thing doesn't carry this definition. I'll urge you to go through this definition. Now let's get back and give you a small idea on frames. Again, I don't claim for these materials. They are taken from the NPTEL lecture series, right? Frames are basically what? Now, they are the descriptions of conceptual individuals. Frames are basically the description of conceptual individuals. Why I have taken you there? Because in knowledge representations, this part, these things, it is better to go through the part that I'm talking through this material that I'm showing you now, rather than from that part. Okay, now the description of the conceptual individuals. Frames can exist in the form of for the real objects like the Watergate Hotel, or for a set of objects, like only hotels. What is the basic difference between them? If I am talking that I am creating a frame for Watergate Hotel, that means I have created a frame structure that is an extension of the semantic net for hotels or a specific hotel called as the Watergate Hotel, and I have created a frame structure for a single specific hotel, that is the Watergate Hotel, right? I can even make out frame structure for whom? Now for a set of hotels, there I'll not be putting up any names, rather I'll be putting the name as only hotels. So if I'm creating a frame structure for hotels, it will be including all the hotels that are possible, or the hotels that I want to include in that particular frame, right? Or I can have a more abstract frame structure. The more abstract frame structures are what? Now the Cola Wars or a Watergate, a specific abstract feature. Now, what is the basic difference between the Watergate example, Watergate Hotel example, the hotel example, the only hotel example, the Cola Wars example, and the Watergate example is that here, this is a specific class within the superclass called as the hotels. In this case, abstract notation, Cola Wars may be a game, maybe some kind of name given to some happening or something. If you want to know about one another happening, the Watergate, it is the Watergate scandal that happened during the Nixon's presidential rule in the United States, right? So I'm talking about a particular scandal, that means the Watergate scandal. I can create a frame for that too. So this is how, that means it is a description of the conceptual individuals. In our slides, the description for the frames and the problem and the problem, how would you tackle the logical problems, or in fact some of the numerical problems with the frames and slots, fillers, semantic nets. These things are not properly given out there, and as far as I have felt, these things are very very necessary, because if you're going to, many of you cannot be restricted at this point of time, because you've got access to almost everything. Again, somebody is waiting, somebody is waiting. Hey, somebody left. ना ना आ गया, 100 is there. Hey, सबको सुनाई पड़ रहा है? Are you getting? हेलो,
Sir,
सुनाई पड़ रहा है ना? मुझे तुम क्यों नहीं सुना? अच्छा, yes सर आ गया, ठीक है. Good, good, Suez, good. Fine, 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 fine. It's okay, it's okay, Suez, it's okay. Thank you. Okay, Rachit. Okay, okay, fine, fine. Now, ना, प्लीज मन ना भी करे तो भी सुन लो, बिलीव करो, सिर्फ सुनने के लिए नहीं. आई कैन अश्योर यू समथिंग दैट in the coming few days I'll be giving you some fantastic flavor of AI very soon. Keep joining me. Now, if I talk about the frame system, is a collection of objects. Let me tell you, frame is a bigger stuff, right? Frame है सबसे बड़ा चीज. Frame comprises of something, we call it as the slots. Frame is constructed of something, we call it as the slots. A slot represents an attribute. So if somebody says that we do have an hierarchy of frame, then slots, then attributes, then it's wrong. Frame comprises of multiple segment of slots, and those slots carries various distinct values. Those values are called as the attributes, right? So एक तो होता है bigger stuff as a frame. Frame does a further subdivisions, that means it carries slots, and if I put up the value for these slots, then those values are nothing but the attributes. So if somebody asks you a question that will it be fair enough to say that the attributes belong to attributes are the further extensions of frame, then the answer would be yes. And if somebody asks you, are attributes and slots synonymous, then you can say to a certain extent they are the same, right? So each slot has a value. The value of an attribute can be another object also. This is a bit confusing, right? This is a bit confusing. Remember, these are all stuffs from this place. So they expect the student to know a certain amount of things. Then they go through these things are there. So don't worry, I'll be talking about all these things gradually. The value of an attribute can be another object. So if somebody says you like any real-time object, if I am classifying it or I am structuring it in the form of a conceptual individual, then I call it as a frame. So am I going to put a frame for an object? Yes, I'm going to put up a frame for an object. Then how this value of an attribute, the value of an attribute can be another object. This thing becomes very clear out here. They have given a small example of the structure descriptions for C language. You can go through them also. It's just an example class that they have shown. Now, coming up here, frames are essentially defined by their relationships with another frame. इसको पढ़ने से पहले, please listen to me. Creating a particular frame, there are some codes for them also. Creating a particular frame structure for representation of a knowledge is of no use until and unless you can make them attached. That means you can make them related to another segment of a frame or another segment of an object, right? So frames are essentially defined by their relationships with other frames. So how am I going to put up these relationships between the frames? Now, a simple idea could have come up in your head. Like if I'm having a frame out here, I can put up an index value for this particular frame and I can attach that index value with another frame. No, this is not the case. The smallest structure of a frame is a slot and its value is an attribute. When I'm having these slots, I can relate one frame with another. I can show its relationship with another frame. I can show its relation with another frame by its slots, right? By its slots. So this is a very good example. Yeah, roll number 221, you raised a hand. Please say. Would you like to ask something?
लोग बोल रहे हैं कि आपने लिमिट 100 पे सेट कर दी है, वो ज्वाइन नहीं कर पा रहे हैं।
हारे लड़का, अरे बाबू मेरे को कोई कुछ बता दे यार कि जिससे कि कोई, मैंने लिमिट नहीं सेट किया रे। अरे मैंने
सर
लिमिट नहीं
काफी
सेट
लोगों
किया।
को मैसेज आ रहा है,
अरे थोड़ा तेज बोल
काफी
बाबा।
लोगों को उनको, सर उनको मैसेज आ रहा है कि लिमिट 100 की है और वो एक्सीड हो गई है।
अरे 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 100 का कैसे है? मेरे पास तो 101 दिख रहा है। ओ मेरे को होस्ट मिला
सर
करके,
वो
राइट?
सर
आपको
फ्री ट्रायल में
आपको मिला,
100 लोग ही आ सकते हैं।
हाँ
आपको मिला के 101 है, पार्टिसिपेंट 100 ही हो पा रहे हैं।
अब क्या
सर
करें?
फ्री ट्रायल में 100 लोगों की लिमिट होती है।
हाँ ये तो फ्री वाला है ना, तो इसमें शायद लिमिट है ना, लेकिन
नहीं सर,
सर
कॉलेज में बाकी फैकल्टीज के उसमें हो रहे हैं 100 के ऊपर।
मैंने कोई लिमिट नहीं सेट किया रे। मैंने
सर
कोई
पता
लिमिट
नहीं,
नहीं
आप
सेट किया।
एक बार
मैंने कोई
कल
आप एक बार बात
राठी
कर
सर के
लीजिए।
लेक्चर में भी यही आ रहा था।
हाँ
कल राठी सर के लेक्चर में भी यही 100 लोगों की लिमिट आ रही थी।
वेटिंग, रुक जा। हाँ मैं अलाउ कर
सर
रहा
आप
हूँ,
एक बार
लेकिन फिर
बात
भी
कर लीजिएगा, उसमें 100 के ऊपर लिमिट जा रही थी बाकी फैकल्टीज में।
अरे मैंने सेट नहीं किया अरे कुछ। अरे मैं आज इसको, मैं इसको फॉर द लास्ट 14 डेज आई वाज गोइंग थ्रू अ कोर्स ऑफ एनआईटी जमशेदपुर। वहां पर मैं इस पे 200 220 के लिमिट पे भी मैंने काम कर रखा है। इसमें आराम से 220 तक भी गया हुआ है।
सर
अब
पता
मैं
नहीं,
क्या
अभी
करूँ
नहीं
इसका?
हो पा रहा है, उन सबको वही मैसेज आ रहा है।
14 दिन के लिए फ्री ट्रायल मिलता है, उसके बाद अपन को 100 की लिमिट हो जाती है।
तो क्या किया जाए बच्चा? तो एक काम करता हूँ मैं, अभी जो 100 है वो रह जाओ, इसके बाद फिर एक बार मैं इसको पुटअप कर दूंगा। तो फिर बाकी के जितने आने चाहिए, ठीक है, उनको थोड़ा सा आप व्हाट्सएप पे बता दो कि मैं इसको फिर से वो अभी नहीं रहेंगे, वो रात के 11 12 बजे एक बार रहें। आई नो, प्लीज आप लोग हंस रहे होंगे रात के 11 बजे का सुन करके, लेकिन क्या किया जा सकता है। अ, तो बाबू मैं देखता हूँ, क्योंकि मैं देखता हूँ व्हाट कैन बी डन। मेरे पास देख, मेरे पास ये है, मेरे पास माइक्रोसॉफ्ट टीम्स है। टीम्स का मेरे पास लॉगिन आईडी पासवर्ड फॉर द पेड वर्जन है, जो मेरे को एनआईटी दुर्गापुर दे के रखा है। उसमें तो 600 800 कुछ भी आ जाए, लेकिन तेरे पास वो लॉगिन नहीं है बाबा, तो आ नहीं पाएगा। सो व्हाट आई कैन डू इज, you can share the video if possible. Yeah, I'm recording it. Yes, of course. Ja, you're right. But the problem that comes up is I have got my 1.5 GB and my sister's 1.5 GB. So इसको अपलोड करना भी फिर एक, let me see, I'll do that. पहले आप लोग तो पढ़ लो यार, जो आए हो थोड़ा सा पढ़ ले बाबा, फिर बाद में देखते हैं, ठीक है? हाँ, तो हम यहाँ पे थे। If I'm talking about the relationships between the frames, that means, so in a nutshell, frames comprises of slots. Slots can have values. Those values are called as the attributes, right? Fit and fine. Now, relationships can be relationships between the frames can be established by using the lowest level part of a frame. We call it as the slots. So if I'm having a frame F which is having a relationship R to a frame G, then what am I going to do? Now I'll be putting this G in the Rth slot of F. कोई इशू नहीं है, अगर समझ में नहीं आया कोई इशू नहीं, मैं अभी फिर से बता रहा हूँ। मेरे पास दो फ्रेम है, आई एम हैविंग द फर्स्ट फ्रेम एज F, आई एम हैविंग द सेकंड फ्रेम एज G, and I am having a relationship of R between F and G, right? I'm having a relationship of uh, F, I am having a relationship of R between F and G. So if I am supposed to establish a relationship of G with F, then what am I going to do? Now, if F is having R slots, then I'll be putting, if F is having an Rth slot, I'll be putting this G in the Rth slots value of frame F. इसको मैं बाद में दिखाता हूं, पहले आप ये वाला देख लो, this example. Like, more generally, the ground predicate, that means a relation R of a frame F with a frame G, is represented in a frame based system by placing a value of G in Rth slot of frame F. So how we are going to write it technically? ना इसको लिखने का तरीका ये है R F of G. That means दोनों frame को will be putting it inside the braces, and the relation that establish the relationship between the first frame and the second frame is outside this brace, right? And if I am putting up this G, I am trying to establish the relationship of G with F, then G will be placed at the Rth slot. The way of writing it is F is the frame, right? And R is the relationship that joins F with G. So to establish the relationship of G with F, G has to be put in the Rth slot of the frame F, right? इसका एक छोटा सा एग्जांपल हम देख लेते हैं, उसके then we'll be moving even further. Like for example, suppose we are having a genealogical description or a genealogical tree of an individual. What is this man? This man is an Adam, right? This man is an Adam, and this Adam is having a wife of Beth, right? And they are having 3 children, Charles, Donna, and Ellen. So now the frame description of Adam might look like, if I'm going to make out a frame for them, what is the basic step for this? I have to define the slots first. So to make out the slots for this particular genealogical tree, this is not a frame, this just a tree description of a particular individual, right? Now this individual Adam out here has got a wife and he has got 3 children. So if I am putting up the classes under which I can club them up, then they are the sex. The sex of all of them can be subdivided as male or something else, right? Their particular sex, their particular spouse name, that means Beth, and the child. That means if I am creating a frame for Adam, acha, what kind of frame can be Adam out here? Any one of you? What kind of frame will be created if I am creating it for Adam? You can go through this line for your answer. What kind of a frame will it be? Obviously it is for a real object, conceptual individual, for obvious reasons it is, right? And for this that means Adam will be for a real object, right? This will be for a real object. The real object is Adam out here. Now here sex, spouse and child are the slots for a frame called as Adam. So Adam does have 3 slots. These 3 are the slots of the frame called Adam. Now note that a single slot may hold several values for obvious reasons. So one of the slot is what? Now one of the slot is child, and it can hold 3 values of Charles, Donna and Alan. Now there is a very interesting line after this. Don't go through this line. I know now you'll be going through this line. If I am having this genealogical tree out here for Adam, and if I ask you that since I am creating a frame for Adam with Beth as his wife and these 3 as his children, so my initial level of slots are what? Na, this, and this, spouse, child and sex, right? What will happen if I'll be joining this frame, that means the frame called Adam, with another frame? If I'm joining this frame of Adam with another frame, X or Y, then I'll be joining it on the basis of their slots. So in context of frames, I'd like to draw your attention towards another fact, that any of these slots can itself hold the position of an object as well as that of a slot for another object with whom it will be attached. नहीं, घबराने का कुछ नहीं, just look out here. If I want to classify all of them as a slot value for some other object where Adam will not be a frame, this particular class of frame will not be a frame, but Adam will be a slot out there, then what will be the minimum number of slots that are needed? The minimum number of slots that are needed will be for Adam, for Beth, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and male and female. See, Adam, his wife, his 3 children, right? The 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and further subclasses that can ever hold for these 5 are, sorry, superclass, are male as well as female, right? So for description of this genealogical tree, if I require at least a few number of frames, then what are these frames can be? If I make out separate frames for them, then I need to have at least these many frames. That means 3 plus 2 5, 3 plus 2 5, then 1 6 and 1 7, right? So a frame structure, it's a convenient representation technique. This is a very simple predicate representation of frames. This is a very simple predicate representation of frames. How do we put a frames? It is out here. And a good discussion has been given about the semantic net as well as that of the frames, right? Now, the frames can be regarded as an extension of the semantic net, which I have already discussed with you. Indeed, it is not clear. I mean, as I've already said, that frames, while moving from the frames toward, while moving from the semantic nets towards frame, there is a very, very thin line boundary. This is very clearly emphasized out here. Indeed, there is no clear distinction between the semantic net and where the frame ends. The semantic net ends and the frame begins, or the frame ends and the semantic net begins, right? The semantic net initially we used to represent labeled connection between objects, but the task becomes more complex. I've said you this, when the representation needs to be more structured. That means while we are talking about semantic nets, it is generally less structured as compared to that of the frames. This is the beautiful definition of frame out here. So the more structured system it becomes, the more beneficial it is for us to use the frames. So a frame is a collection of attributes or slots and associated values that describe some real world entity. The frames on their own are not particularly helpful, but the frame systems are a powerful way of encoding the information. Now there is a very good, they have shown, I mean IID people have shown a very nice representation of the class and the instance structure. अब आपको थोड़ा सा लग रहा होगा where I am taking you. So the lecture slide that is there with you here, from this part onwards, from here to this description, that means viewing the model as a frame. Then for this algorithm for property inheritance, this thing becomes much more clearer. And before we move on to this inferential knowledge part, for the description of it, it is better to know this thing out here. So let us talk about this. We are having a class and we are having an instance set out here. Before I talk about the class and the instance set, there is something that you need to know before we go with the example of it. I'll be talking about the class, the set, and the instance example. So these are already there in our lecture slides, but not vividly described. So I have taken out some of the NPTEL here. Aapko yahan pe you'll be finding it much more healthier to understand. See here, is a relation is in fact the subset relation. What am I talking about? Now I'm just talking about this thing. It is about the class inclusion. While I'm talking about the instance, I'm talking about the element of. Here, what I am talking about? I am talking about the show class membership, right? So is for class inclusion and instance is for class membership, right? Let us come back here to this part. Dear ladies and gentlemen, is my mom's voice disturbing you? Can you reply? Is it okay?
Sir,
सुनाई तो नहीं पड़ रहा है ना? बस चलो 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 ठीक है बच्चा, ठीक है, ठीक ठीक ठीक, it's okay. It's okay. So this is there. तो इसका एक example, let us see an example for that. I'm talking about the class. इसका the better name is the class set, and instance के लिए हम use करते हैं the element of a class, right? अब आप देखते जाइए. Here I'm talking about a person, right? A person is that means it belongs to a higher class, that means mammal, with the cardinality. That means how many person are mammal? it has not been specified here because it is not needed, right? It is not needed. Now we are coming down to an adult male. Again, we are coming to this class, that means is a person. So अब क्या हुआ ना, adult male is a person and a person is a mammal. I'm gradually showing you the frame structure. Do I need the cardinality for it? My obvious answer will be no, I don't need the cardinality for it because I'm going for an is a class. I'm going for an is a class. I'm going for an is a class. That means a class inclusion. I'm not talking about the class membership, right? I'm not talking about the class membership. Now I'm coming down even further. A rugby player. A rugby player again is a adult male, and that adult male is a person, and that person is a mammal, right? Cardinality is not there, but since I am moving towards more and more specified example in the frame structure or more and more specified area of this frame, so my level of description gradually increases. That means here adult males height I'm not concerned about because it is much more diversified. That thing will not allow me to attach this frame on the basis of its slot and its particular values with another frame, so that the attachment of the frames becomes much more easier, so the class descriptions becomes much more vivid for more specified classes. So rugby player is an adult male, he belongs to a class of a person, and that person belongs to a class of a mammal. So I am here neglecting the height and the weight, even though these things could have been added out here and they may not have been neglected, right? There may be position, team, and all these things are also there. Now back. This is a very, very important thing. Kindly pay heed to this part. I am talking about back, right? Back means it is a particular instance in which a rugby player can be categorized, right? That means a rugby player, जैसे forward player, फिर backward, फिर back, ये सारे these are the particular class assignment to a player called the rugby player. अब आप एक बात मुझे कह सकते हो कि यहाँ पर Mike Hall holds an instance of back. The difference here is, here back can be treated as a position and back can be treated also as an object class. Many of you might be knowing that SR back or some name I'm forgetting. He was also a classy player of rugby, right? So he was a rugby player, right? He was a rugby player. Or back is also a position where Mike Hall is playing, who's having a height of 6, position of this, team of this, he belongs to a team of this, and team color is black and blue for what? Cardiff RFC के लिए the team color is black and blue. So इसका एक और simpler example is this one that is there with you, right? Simpler example is this one that is there with you. ठीक, ये आपका एक pictorial but not such a good pictorial representation of frames. This is not very much I mean, I don't call it as much more authentic, even though many of the textbooks they follow it. Much more better version is this one, right? Now, until now, what I was talking about? Now, I was talking about is a. There are 1 is a, 2 is a, 3 is a, and 4 is a. That means if I am talking about the generalization, so generalization continues from back upwards until we reach up to the person, right? थोड़ा सा आप पूछ सकते हो कि मैंने क्या बोला कि आई एम मूविंग अपवर्ड्स, आई एम मूविंग. बच्चे हमारे यहाँ आंधी तूफान आने वाला है, सो आई एम सॉरी, आई हैव टू कॉल इट अ डे. डू यू हैव एनी प्रॉब्लम्स? आई एम स्टॉपिंग हियर. भाई पावर भी चला गया, मेरे यहाँ अंधेरा हो गया रे. बंद करूं? अरे कुछ तो बोल. Hey, सुनो, Suesh, are you there? Suesh, can you hear me? Suesh, सुयश सिंह, सुयश प्रताप, हाँ
Yes,
अटेंडेंस
sir. Yes, sir.
सुयश,
Yes, sir.
सुयश जरा स्क्रीनशॉट ले ले बाबा, जरा इसका फटाफट स्क्रीनशॉट ले ले,
Yes, sir.
फटाफट। अच्छा आप सबसे मुझे कुछ पूछना था, कैन वी मीट अगेन एट नाइट एट अराउंड 11?
No, sir.
अरे सो जाएगा क्या रे? चलो कोई नहीं, कल मिलते हैं, ठीक है, चलेगा इसी टाइम? कुछ तो बोलो।
Yes,
चलो
sir.
फाइन 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 फाइन, चलो फटाफट स्क्रीनशॉट लो, फटाफट हो जाए तो बताओ।
Yes, sir. हो गया.
हो गया?
Yes, sir.
ओके, थैंक यू, चलो बाय 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 बाय, टेक केयर, बाय।